Hello, NAAIA community. Get ready to relive insightful discussions, gain fresh perspectives, and be inspired by the wealth of knowledge our community has to offer. Let's dive into another episode.
Distinct honor to welcome you to the National African American Insurance Association's Juneteenth webinar themed Power of the Past, Force of the Future. Today, we come together to delve into the historical importance of Juneteenth, its relevance to the insurance industry, and our ongoing journey towards racial equality and justice. Through this engaging discussion, we will explore how acknowledging and learning from the past empowers us to shape a more inclusive and equitable future for our industry and the communities we serve. Juneteenth, commemorating the end of slavery in the United States, serves as a powerful reminder of the resilience, strength, and enduring spirit of African Americans and people of African descent around the world. Juneteenth marks not only a pivotal moment in history, but also an opportunity to reflect on the progress made and the work still need to be done to achieve true equality. In the insurance industry, we've made significant strides towards greater diversity and inclusion. However, challenges remain, particularly for people of color who continue to face barriers to advancement and lack of access to mentors and sponsors. These obstacles not only limit opportunities for individual growth, but also hinder the insurance industry's overall innovation, progress, and profit. Our panelists will share their perspectives today on how the lessons from Juneteenth can guide us in creating more equitable workplace environment, and in turn, a more inclusive industry where we all feel like we belong. They will discuss the importance of recognizing and addressing systemic inequalities and the role of leadership in driving change. By learning from the past and harnessing its power, we can be a force for a more inclusive and just future. We are honored to have with us today three extraordinary individuals whose experiences and insights will illuminate our path forward. Their stories of overcoming challenges, advocating for equity, and leading with purpose will inspire us all to continue striving for progress. As we celebrate Juneteenth, let us remember that the journey toward racial equity and justice is ongoing. Let us commit to using the power of the past to inform us and drive our efforts, ensuring that we build a future where everyone in the insurance industry and beyond can thrive. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Kevin Hooks, Director of National Programs and Chief of Staff at NAAIA, to guide us through this inspiring conversation. Please join me in welcoming him to kick off today's conversation. Kevin?
Thank you so much, Rebecca and Jephthah. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on what part of the world you are in, and thank you for joining us. I'm Kevin Hooks, the National Director of Programs, Chief of Staff for NAAIA, and it's really important as we gather today to commemorate Juneteenth through this program that we aptly titled Power of the Past and Force of the Future, that it's essential to reflect on its profound historical significance. Juneteenth marks the day on June 19th, 1865, when a white general, General Gordon Granger, arrived in Galveston, Texas, to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation, nearly 2.5 years after President Lincoln signed it and freed the slaves. This delay underscores the complexities and the struggles of achieving true freedom that in many ways we still face today. The journey to freedom was not traveled alone, though. It required the relentless efforts of allies and people from all communities, not only white allies and abolitionists, but the courage and the resilience of both freed and enslaved Black individuals during that time period. The powerful coalition was crucial then, and those kinds of coalitions continue to be crucial today, just like in the civil rights movement. And so achieving equity within the risk and insurance industry demands the same type of unity and commitment. It requires us all to work together from all backgrounds, no matter what your position is, if we really want to create a more inclusive and fair environment that we all have the opportunity to thrive in. With that, it is my honor to welcome our esteemed panelists. They will share their insights and experiences, and I think you all are going to enjoy this conversation. So please join me in welcoming Kabir, Lawal, Director of Claims Services at Marsh McLennan Agency, Mark Lomas, Head of Culture at Lloyd's of London, and Sonja Teague, Senior Vice President at Chubb. Mark, you're muted. There we go. And Kabir, the same. Kabir?
I think, am I still muted?
No, but you're not on camera.
Okay, great.
So what we are going to do, everyone, is we are going to give each of our panelists 1 minute to not only introduce themselves, but to explain why it's so important for them to that they advocate for justice and for equality. And we're going to start with Kabir Lawal. Kabir, what's your why, brother?
Well, my name is Kabir Lawal. I'm currently a director of claims services for Marsh McLennan. I've been in the insurance industry for probably about 20 years now. And I like to joke that my first claim was with a pterodactyl because I've been in it so long. One of the things that I find interesting about the insurance industry is the several different aspects of it. And, you know, underwriting analyzes the claims, sales and marketing sells it, but claims is where the rubber meets the road. And I think that's an important part of the industry. And that's one of the reasons why I joined the industry, because it helped you, you are there to help people resolve their problems on the worst day of their lives. When a company is in trouble or people in trouble, you are there to help them. So that was one of the key reasons why I felt it was a good way to I joined the insurance industry.
No, I love that. And Mark, I'm passing the baton to you. Same question.
All right. So I'm Mark Lomas, head of culture at Lloyd's of London. Within my role sits everything diversity, inclusion, employee engagement, leadership, capability, and well-being. And then also oversight of the Lloyd's market around Principle 13, which is the culture, diversity, non-financial misconduct principle. Why for me? Well, I'm originally from Bermuda. I won't bore you with my life story, but through a long and winding road, ended up at Lloyd's in London. And I think I think for Lloyd's, it has a very particular meaning. And that kind of road to where we are now started in 2020 with Lloyd's apology for its role in transatlantic slavery, and through the rest of the webinar, I'll kind of take you through the journey that Lloyd's has been on. And for me, it was important that we address the issue head on. And that meant doing the research, coming up with a response, and consulting with the community. So that's my advice.
No, I love that. And I love the intentionality in which you're doing your job. So I can't wait for us to unpack that part of the discussion. Next, I'm going to pass the baton to Sonja Teague. Sonja, good morning or good afternoon.
Hello, everyone. Sonja Teague. I am a senior vice president with Chubb. I head up the A&H claims department for North America. And I also lead the claims quality assurance and compliance divisions for all lines of business for North America.
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so speaking to my why, I really truly just want to leave this industry much better than I found it. I started in the insurance industry almost 30 years ago, and I can honestly say that there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. And there certainly weren't a lot of people who were invested in helping people that look like me. I think we have a unique opportunity now that we have the space and opportunity to shape and dictate our careers if we really understand the rules of engagement and the things that we need to do in order to affect our careers. Martin Luther King once talked about the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer. And he said the thermometer basically tells you the temperature in the room, whereas the thermostat dictates the temperature in the room. I want to continue to be a part of that thermostat to be able to influence and shape what the new corporate America or insurance industry looks like.
No, thank you so much for that. But Kabir, listen, we're quoting Dr. King, and he talked about the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. You've had a long storied career in the work that you're doing. It's not a natural line necessarily to go justice and equity and claims, but talk about how you're able to not only find success through your work, but really look out for the best interests of those that are up and coming.
Okay. Well, thank you for that question. I guess one of the key things is it's important, I feel it's important for us to know that we have to help the next generation coming along. We all have an obligation, just as Sonja said, she's been in the industry for about 30 years. I've been in the industry for about 20 years. When we started in the industry, there are very few of us that looked like, there are very few people that looked like us. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in a room where I was the only person of color. And sometimes I didn't feel like when I did find another person of color that they weren't necessarily trying to help me move up the corporate ladder. So I think it's important that we work as a group, that we all work together to figure out how we can help each other move ahead. One of the things that I've determined that I've found out that in every organization that I've been involved in, that there is someone willing to help and mentor you. And you just need to seek out those people and figure out how to give them the opportunity to help and work with you to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, hey, Mark, Kabir was just talking about the importance of helping people move forward, but you can't really move forward unless you really reconcile the past and acknowledge the past. You mentioned the Lloyd's involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. Talk about like how you guys have finally acknowledged that and how it's helping inform the work you do moving forward.
Yeah, so I think for Lloyd's, it started in 2020, kind of with the height of the Black Lives Matter campaign. Lloyd's is one of the first corporates, particularly in the UK, that apologized for its role in transatlantic slavery and then set out some influence to. And part of that was to research and understand Lloyd's role. So we entered into a research collaboration with Black Beyond Data from Johns Hopkins University. And I think critically, that research was independently funded, so Lloyd's didn't pay for it. And we also didn't have editorial control. So a good way of thinking about it is the school kids couldn't mark their own homework. It really was very independent. And the output of that wasn't just kind of a report that sits on the website, but is a digital humanities archive called Underwriting Soul, which is available in perpetuity. After this, we'll share the link. Anyone can go and explore that archive, and we do hope that it'll spark further research. But what did we find? I think we found a few things, and particularly for me, one of the real takeaways was just how sophisticated the business of slavery actually was. It was as sophisticated as any kind of international business arrangements today. Just moved slower because obviously it wasn't digital. And one of the real challenges of researching Lloyd's history is the fragmented nature of the archive. So one of the things that people misunderstand is they think Lloyd's of London is an insurance company, and of course it's not. It's an insurance market. And in those times, Lloyd's essentially provided the place for people to meet, and individuals would come and do their business in Lloyd's market. There was no real central record keeping. So it's not like a kind of Hogwarts where you have tons and tons of archival material. It's very, very fragmented. And we are very, very grateful to the research team at Black Beyond Data for their efforts in the area. And I would certainly say to people, do go and have a look at Underwriting Soul. And then what did we learn? I think we learned that it was a very sophisticated system, that it was indeed global and complex. Lloyd's of London was at the center of that kind of business network. The leaders at Lloyd's at that time were very experienced in aspects of the slave trade and broader slave economy as well. And then we have a few records like the slave ship policy for the Geese Bacoa, and a couple of risk books as well. And from there, we're able to kind of gain somewhat of an understanding about what Lloyd's role was in the broader slave economy. And I think what we can then kind of reflect on from the research is how does that kind of what do those impacts, how do they translate themselves to sort of the current insurance market? And I think, you know, we hit on 4 areas, which I'll also talk about later in terms of our response. Access to education, particularly higher education, difficulty in accessing careers, so getting your foot in the door, difficulty in progressing careers, and then impacts for broader communities. And in coming up with our response, we've done a lot of consultation around how we respond to that effectively, which I'll cover later. But I think it was very important that the research was independently conducted. I think that was absolutely critical to doing it with the highest kind of degree of ethics.
No, that's great, you know, and you've talked about the truth, but, you know, and acknowledging the truth, and I appreciate that. Sonja, you're doing something, I think your organization is talking about bringing this stuff and making it actionable. So talk about some of the work that you guys are doing to really bring to life the need and the kinds of work that it takes in order to address these issues.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And thanks for that, Kevin. You know, I do think that the insurance industry has come a long way, but there's just so much more work to do. You know, we see external organizations like NAAIA and Sisterhood Conference, Leaders Edge, and all of these are different groups that are looking to help coach and develop and maybe even provide additional education. But I really think in order to address the inequities in corporate America, we really have to go to the core of the matter. And that's going to within the organizations. I think organizations have to be more intentional about recruiting, developing talent, also promoting from within. And I think we have to go deeper than just to talk about this as initiatives, but actually to start holding senior leaders like myself accountable for the results that we want to see. You know, what would it look like if part of our responsibilities and what we're measured on is how many diverse candidates we actually bring into the organization and actually attribute to their success? I think we'd see a major difference in how successful and how much they would thrive in an organization if they had that type of support and there was accountability at the senior leadership level. But I also think that there's an opportunity for employees to activate. You know, within Chubb, I think we've created the space and we have support for various affinity groups for all employees. You know, Mark mentioned the studies of Lloyd. I know one of the studies we recently looked at was the McKinsey report of 2020, which, you know, disclosed the workplace in corporate America was far worse for Black women. And with the support of senior leaders within Chubb, we launched the Black Women of Chubb, also known as BWOC initiative. And this is an initiative that's really focused on Black women development in particular, some of the challenges that we face. So we deal with issues, you know, like imposter syndrome, how to effectively network, the importance of sponsorship versus mentorship, just to name a few. But again, we're equipping women with tools to be successful and then really understanding the rules of engagement. I think it's so important that we understand that many years ago, really probably even 5 years ago, these were not affinity groups that were largely supported. They weren't even thought about, let alone talked about. So as we start to see doors open for more conversation and communication within these sort of groups, we have to seize the moment and make sure that we're leveraging it.
You know, it's really interesting. You pointed out ERGs and, you know, they're so important to this work. And I think oftentimes they don't get the recognition that they really deserve. Unpack a little bit more the value of those communities being given a voice through those programs.
Yeah, so, you know, when you think about the different affinity groups, some of them have executive sponsorship that is really interested in understanding what needs to take place or what's important to the different groups of employees. And so it's your opportunity for a platform to say, these are the things we're looking for. These are the things that are important. These are the things that are gaps. All of that becomes valuable information. But the other thing that I think is important, when you started at the top of this call, we talked about learning from each other. There are some that have already charted this path, and as long as they're vesting in some of these affinity groups, we're able to share our experiences, our knowledge, so that others are not having to figure it out for themselves. They can leverage what we've already learned and go forward.
Yeah, and speaking of leveraging the things that we learn, Kabir, talk about some of the work that you're aware of and strategies for better serving the historically marginalized communities in the space that you operate in. You're muted. Kabir, you're muted.
Bear with me, I'm having a few computer problems. My computer's trying to do an update.
We understand.
Without my authority, so I'm currently fighting that, so bear with me, guys. No, I think there are a lot of strategies that can be used to help the marginalized communities. Overall, I think one of the key things is over time, there's been an erosion in trust between insurance companies and marginalized communities in general, just because of the way things were set up over time. And as Mark mentioned, there's a lot of history there that makes people of color a little concerned about it. But there are a lot of ways that a lot of carriers, such as Lloyd's and Chubb and other carriers, are working to make changes. And some of the ways they could do that are things such as inclusive product development. They could make products that are more geared towards the communities of color and people who are marginalized in general. They can design insurance products that help, for lower income families, the sectors, create more additional flexible payments, things to that effect. They could also have additional community engagement in education. It's a lot of people don't fully understand how beneficial insurance can be to them. Growing up, I never thought about getting renter's insurance initially until someone broke into my home. And I noticed that that was something that if I'd known about, I definitely would have been invested in. So things like that would definitely help the community if there was additional community engagement and education. Setting up more affordable programs for communities of color. Sometimes communities of color don't have as much access to funds as others, and they could partner with, how do I put it, non-for-profit organizations to help educate and assist with making the policies more affordable. We could also have more culturally competent customer service people. I mean, sometimes it's important that our salespeople who are explaining to us what we need, understand us. And sometimes if you're not a part of the community, you don't fully understand what's needed. So I think that'd be great. And data analytics is a big part now because insurance companies have access to more data than most people. And they can determine where it best fits to help the people in the best way it can. I mean, there's a precedent of insurance companies helping because it helps them lower their losses. For instance, insurance companies helped with the seatbelt laws and things like that. It wasn't necessarily an altruistic thing for them to do to help, but it helped reduce losses. If they help in the community, that could help reduce losses also. So yes, there may be a financial cost, but it'd be quite beneficial. And I guess the last thing I was thinking about is, which has actually started to happen more and more over the years, is more inclusive marketing. It was very rare that I would see a person of color in commercials for insurance a long time ago. And since then, Allstate has had a Black spokesperson. I see a lot more people of color and different minorities in the commercials. So it's a lot more inclusive than it used to be. So these are some of the strategies that I believe that can be helpful for insurance companies to make it appeal more to colored and minority group communities.
Mark, Kabir just talked a lot about the importance of data and data mining. And I don't care whether it's universal intelligence, human intelligence, quantitative or qualitative. Once you get the data, you have to operationalize the learnings from that data. Can you talk about, after you guys have gathered all this information, how you're operationalizing that information at Lloyd's?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned earlier, one of my part of my role is oversight of the market. And we collect diversity data and broader culture data all across the Lloyd's market. And in response to the research that we did, we put in place certain requirements, targets, ambitions for the Lloyd's market, including the 1 in 3 hiring ambition, which is that 1 in 3 hires come from an ethnically diverse background. And since 2021, we have measured and held firms accountable for that. We've had over 5,000 hires into the Lloyd's market. And we've seen the percentage of ethnically diverse leaders jump from 4% to 9%. So we've got a ways to go, but certainly the key is having the data to hand and measuring. And I think that has been part of the process we went through in consulting with a few hundred ethnically diverse colleagues across the market in coming up with our response to the research into Lloyd's history, is a program that literally supports ethnically diverse groups from the classroom all the way to the boardroom, with a series of initiatives, including a 1 in 3 hiring, bursaries. It includes our partnership with NAAIA over this side of the pond. It includes taking our award-winning development program called Accelerate and piloting the US cohort this year as well. And for those folks that come through the Accelerate program, kind of subsidized masters, and then also a board level talent pool. So we absolutely take away the challenge that, oh, we can't find the talent, but we know the talent's there. So I think it is very important to have a very systemized view of what you want to do, be able to track and record it, and then through our oversight on key elements, we're able to hold firms to account. But data is absolutely key to evidence-based decision-making, measuring progress, and specifically holding leadership to account for that.
No, I love that. And Sonja, Mark just answered with the underpinning of his response was really more about key performance indicators or objectives and key results. So there's an intentionality that allows you not only to set goals, but to dashboard the results. Can you talk about like how important it is in the work that you do that you make it measurable so that you can then achieve your objectives?
Yeah, so going back to Kevin, what I said earlier about putting those making senior leaders accountable. When we just talk about things in theory and say it's a nice to have, we really want to be intentional about recruiting, then it's a sort of nice to have that maybe it will happen. But if now we put hard numbers to that, to say that we want to see a specific percentage, and that again, you're going to be held accountable for obtaining that, I think that there's more effort that's put toward making sure that takes place and that happens. I think that organizations would be remiss if they did not take that next step to say, not just as a token, we want to make sure that there's a certain percentage, but to ensure that we're not getting caught up in that old stereotype of tokenism, that we also are going to be holding them accountable for the success of any leaders or any diverse candidate that's brought on board, and then wrapping around those individuals to give them the support needed, the tools, whatever it is, to make sure that they not only feel a part of the organization, but they're thriving in the organization and they feel like they belong, which is another aspect that needs to be filled and close the gap. we often talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we have to bring along the belonging aspect of it as well. If I don't know all the lyrics to the song, I may not feel like I belong at that party.
Yeah, no, that's a great response. We've had a lot of conversation about these internal machinations of the work. Talk about what things that insurers can do for the lifeblood of our communities, especially underrepresented communities, minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs. What can we do to help them be able to be positioned for success better?
Is that to me, Kevin?
Yeah, that's just a curiosity question to you.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I've seen, so I sit more on the claim side and business side, so I don't directly deal with sales and marketing, but I think one of the things that I have seen that I think has been effective is some corporations have really leaned into making sure that they are dealing with organizations that work with minority-owned businesses, whether there's a certain percentage of those companies that they have to have, that they do business with, or that they have minorities serve, be a part of their board. I think that's one way that they can contribute. The other thing that I think senior executives can do, and I will blow my own horn here, is be active members of other boards in the community, right? I think that we can bring a lot of knowledge and understanding that can help the organizations run their corporations, whether it's a small business or not, but run them like major organizations and attribute to their success.
No, that's a great answer. And before we open it up to questions, Kabir, Sonja just really talked a great deal about what I consider to be modeling the kind of behavior that really is important. You've achieved a level of success, from the communities that we can look up to, but then you also give back to your community. Why is that so important? And how do you model that behavior, knowing that when people see you and you see you in your success, still give back, that maybe it's going to inspire them to do the same?
One of the things, like I said, from the beginning, I was always brought up to believe that it's important to help the person next to you. That was one of the key things that my parents always said. And just as a brief background, I'm British born, I'm Nigerian, and I came to the United States. And I watched a lot of things from a different perspective, because I got to see things, how do I put it, from bird's eye level. I didn't understand a lot of things until I got here. It's kind of like the Trevor Noah syndrome, when he said he got here and he learned a lot of new things. Like, I knew I was Black, but I didn't know that I was really Black until I got here. So it was a different scenario. And along the way, I learned that, I learned to, we have to help each other. There's different parameters. And to be honest, I found out that you have to be twice as good to be as good. So that's why I commend some of the other speakers on here, because I know that you have done phenomenal jobs to get to where you are. And I believe that we all have a responsibility. No, we all have an obligation to help make, I believe Sonja's words were, to make the insurance industry better than when we first stepped in. So I would like to look around. I would like the next generation of adjusters, or insurance people, to look around and see more people like them, to have an opportunity for more mentoring, to be able to network a lot easier, and just to, in general, have a lot better work-life balance and to be happier. That's all.
No, thank you for that. And so there's several questions that coming from the audience. So I'm going to pose a question and I'll pick a respondent. But if someone wants to jump in, feel free to do so. So question, what are ways that non-Black employees of color can support and spotlight Black folks in corporate America? And I'm going to start with you on that one, Mark.
All right, thank you. It's a great question.
Even though you're over across the pond.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fine. Well, I think it boils down to active allyship and sponsorship, right? it's easy to say, yes, I'm an ally, I'm supportive, and you kind of attend the event and go home, whatever it is. But the real importance is the advocating for opportunities. You know, whether that's a stretch project, whether that's getting into the room with the network to build relationships, whether it's taking on things which stretch skills. And I think that is very important. So that's what I would say is the best way to spotlight people is to do it and highlight their talent. So take that want to be an ally and make it very, very active.
No, I love that. Sonja, you know I want to hear from you on that question.
No, I love it. You know, and Mark said it very well. I think allyship is absolutely critical to furthering this work, right? There's not even enough of us in key positions to make a difference. So we absolutely need allies. Some of my best sponsors and advocates have actually been other white, Hispanic men. And so I do think that it is important for allies to be in the room to hear the conversation so that they can really understand what the issues are. Absent that, they're assuming that everything is fine and trying to figure out what is the big deal because it's not a part of their world. So they don't understand unless we have the conversations and invite them into a room where there is positive conversation where they can understand. And I think you'd be surprised how many really do want to help further the work and partner with us and help advance our careers.
No, that's a great answer. So I'm going to go to question number 2. It goes, I'm curious how other groups reacted to a Black woman mentorship program and if it was seen as not being inclusive. As a Black woman, I sometimes hear that we are not being inclusive if a group is exclusively for Black women only. People may feel that way, but not engage in the conversation. What's your response to that one as well, Sonja?
Yeah, and so that question was raised very, very directly within Chubb. And, you know, we were even challenged on why is it limited to Black women? Why isn't it for Black men? Why isn't it for all? But guys, we didn't write the report. The McKinsey study is out there. And if I remember the number correctly, it was 25 million employees. Now, if they all participated in the survey, I can't say for sure, but this is a study that was done independent of Chubb. So I get to have my waiver, as Mark said. We didn't create it. But we did see that as a real issue. So it's a starting place. I will tell you, when this organization pushes content or we come together to talk about various topics, all are invited. Allies are invited, men are invited. Again, it's important for everyone to understand why we think there are challenges or why we think there are certain areas where we could develop our skills in. And if you can leverage the tools from the conversation, then you're welcome to attend.
Yeah, no, that's great. Kabir, I got a question for you, brother, because you're in cybersecurity, you know the technology space very well. But the question is, do we think so many quotes and interaction with clients being online, often entirely self-service, do you think that helps improve equity in the insurance industry for underserved communities? They can't see you, so how can they discriminate against you? Do you think it helps?
Well, that's a really good question. I think at this point, we have to look at, yes, they can't see you, they don't know you, and sometimes your name doesn't necessarily give your ethnicity away. But I think right now we're in the middle of what I would consider a paradigm shift in the industry, because AI is going to make a lot of changes. And yes, we can, I mean, the fact that people don't know who you are, you have the opportunity to just be who you want to be, get treated as you are online, definitely helps in a sense. But also, we still need to take into consideration, we're still going to meet each other, we still need diversity, because even though we have that, thoughts of how people, for instance, a different group thinks differently. If you don't have a diverse group, no matter how much information you put into AI or anything else, it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. So yes, it does help that, in a sense, that sometimes people don't know you and you can operate strictly on what's being learned. But in the big picture, we still have to get to know each other and improve things. So, yeah.
Mark, listen, we all sort of believe in the hope of technology. Kabir mentioned AI and its ongoing development. How is technology helping you do your work?
That's a really good question. And I'll pick up the AI point specifically. So we run analysis at Lloyd's, the corporation, on all of our employee life cycle. So performance management, recruitment, grievance, etc., talent and succession. We look at all of it across the kind of quality spectrum. But one of the things we've been really exploring is the impact of performance management on developing people's careers. And so we're running a pilot this year, running AI across all objectives in the corporation. So all 8,000 objectives, and checking them for specificity and measurability. Why? Because what we found when we did some work and analysis on it was there were some kind of repeat top performers. Actually, when you looked at the number and sort of specificity of their objectives, wasn't really there. And then if you looked at the other spectrum, actually, there was quite a lot of specificity. So I think AI can be very useful, but you have to take the time to train the AI properly. You have to take the time to understand what is the outcome that you're going for. And for us, it's equity in performance management by making sure the starting position is right. And I think those are two lessons that we've learned quite well. We've just done a sample of around 800 objectives with the AI robot, and it will give coaching notes to managers on how to make it more specific, more measurable. And then by the end of this year, we will do it for every single employee in the corporation. And so I think that's a good example of how you can use AI to try and root out bias and put in corrections in the process. But you do have to be careful about how you train the AI. What Kabir said was absolutely right. It is the most important bit, is the thinking up front of what you put into that AI.
Yeah, you touched on it just a bit, but I want you to go a little bit deeper on you talking about training it properly. What kind of intentional approaches are you all taking to help reduce algorithmic bias in your training processes?
So, for example, I actually can't train an AI to say if an objective is reasonable, right? That is, a human being has to make that judgment. But what I can train an AI bot on is actually, can this be measured? Is there an objective measure, and is it specific? And those are the two areas which we can train AI, and the AI takes the bias out of it. So, for example, I'm not an underwriter. I might look at an objective in an underwriting function, and to an underwriter it might be fine. But actually, is it measurable? Is it specific? I can train the AI to do that very, very, very carefully, and that's the experiment that we're running at the moment. It is interesting. We've gone through kind of 10 iterations with the robot, kind of teaching it on exactly what's measurable, exactly what is specific, and we'll keep doing it. And like I said, this year we'll have put the whole of the corporation through it. But I think you do have to, number one, understand what you're after. And for us, it's the removal of bias in the performance management process by ensuring the starting point is equitable, that objectives are measurable and specific. And then being very clear in terms of training the AI bot what it is looking for. And again, that's not you do it once and it's perfect. It's an iterative process. But that's an example of how we're using AI.
No, listen, and I applaud the work that you guys are doing, because that's so important. AI is going to be one of those things in technology that's either going to help us be able to improve our work in this space, or it's going to continue the detrimental approach that we have and continue to lock people of color and underrepresented communities out. So thank you for that. And for other people, other questions that we have, we're running against the time. So before we get out of here, I want to give the panelists a chance to give their closing remarks. And I'm going to start with you, Kabir.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to have this type of a discussion. One of the things that sticks with me is I watched a movie called Origins recently. And one of the key things in that is that I took away from that is it compared America to an old house. We inherited this house. We all live in it right now. But there are a lot of stress fractures and it needs a new roof. We are the current tenants of this country/house. And I think we all have an obligation to repair it and make it a better place to live. So with that being said, all of us need to work together, regardless. I mean, there was a question of how can people of color, how can people not of color help? Everyone can help because everyone has a duty, actually an obligation to help make this a better house. So that's how I'd like to conclude this.
Thank you for that, brother. Mark, I'm going to give it over to you.
Great, thank you. I think I would leave you with this thought, that progress is impossible without participation. And so it really is up to us in the end to kind of lift as we climb. And I noticed someone asked, in the chat or in the question, how do I get a sponsor? My key advice for that is find the person that would be the most useful in your career and go and ask them. Go and attend some of the events. And someone once told me when I was young, and I didn't really understand them until I was much older, your network is your network. And I think that is a really great tip. Invest in your network. You want to find a sponsor, go and ask. People do tend to say yes. They do want to be helpful in my experience.
No, that's wonderful. And Sonja, bring it home for us.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Mark, I'm going to piggyback off of what you just said, unplanned, but I think it's just is so connected. And my advice is just to make sure that you have the right board of advisors that are helping you to navigate it and shape your career. Nobody gets there on their own, but I think we need to be extra careful just about who's pouring into our spirits and who's advising us on the right steps to take, whether they're vertical or horizontal moves, because all can be very advantageous to your career long-term. And I think making sure that you're in the right space where you can spread your wings. I think the insurance industry is rich with opportunities that's often not talked about in schools. But when you think about it, there's a lot that we can do here, a lot we can accomplish. And so just look for where your passion lies and try and find that job that fits and meets that passion. And I think you'll be more successful and effective.
No, I love that. Almost a drop the mic moment. Listen, I want to thank you all for participating. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I know that the audience got a lot of valuable information. I'm seeing it pop up in the chats. So thank you all. And to the audience, listen, NAAIA will be on that front line of this fight. We love to have you join us and be a part of that fight. Stokely Carmichael once said that our grandfathers had to run. But our generation's out of breath. We ain't running no more. We're going to stand up and we're going to fight for justice, and we're going to do it to our dying breath. So join us in this fight, in this struggle. And with that being said, I'm turning it back over to Jephthah. Thank you all.
Thank you for watching this flashback episode of NAAIA. We appreciate your time and hope you found the insights valuable. Stay tuned for more enriching content. Until next time, thank you for being a part of the NAAIA community.